You pointed out the 2018 election. That was my last reelect.
Yep.
It was, at the time, it was the most expensive Senate race in the country. We were outspent 3-1, and I won by just 2 points. I'm running again in 2024. The Democrats have already identified my race as their top target to come after in 2024. So I would encourage folks at home, come to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org,
right,
because they're going to flood cash into Texas,
right,
and we need to defend Texas, and we need to stand up and fight against the lunacy from the other side.
There's no begging quite like a Republican recognizing that he may actually be subject to the democratic process and pleading for cash on national television. Me at 14 trying to get my parents to give me money for the mall was still less desperate than Ted Cruz on air. And by the way, this is reminiscent of the last Republican to beg for money on national television, nearly to the point of tears, Lindsey Graham.
I'm being killed financially. This money is because they hate my guts. LindseyGraham.com, help me. They're killing me money-wise. So if you want to help me, LindseyGraham.com, $5 or $10 goes a long way. I need conservatives to help me. You need to help us all. LindseyGraham.com.
Was that enough for you, or did you maybe need some more?
If you can afford $5 or $10, if you can't afford $1, fine. Just pray. Make sure you vote as early as you can in your state. Don't risk anything anymore. Vote as soon as you can. Pray for this country. Pray for this president. And if you got any money to give, give it. LindseyGraham.com. So I'm getting overwhelmed.
Yeah,
LindseyGraham.com. Help me. They're killing me money-wise. Help me. You did last week. Help me again.
Okay, I'm finished now. Except
I'm getting outraised 3-1, outspent 4-1. If you want to help me fight back, go to LindseyGraham.com. $5 or $10 from half your audience would fill in the gap that I'm facing. My opponent raised $57 million. One of the reasons he's raising so much money is I stood up for Kavanaugh. They tried to take Kavanaugh out. I'm worried about Amy Barrett. She can handle what comes her way, but our Republicans need to defend her, and we will. So help me at LindseyGraham.com. They're trying to silence us all by swamping us with money. So this is a fight that really does matter.
Okay, just one more.
Much for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Help me if you can. LindseyGraham.com.
Even Laura Ingraham was like, damn, dude, give it a rest. But back to Ted Cruz. If you're wondering why he's so scared, it's probably because he remembered that he now has to run on the record that he spent the last 5 years amassing. Meaning that this is the first time he'll be facing voters after watching a freeze descend upon his state, and instead of, oh, I don't know, helping the people he was elected to serve by marshaling resources and assisting those in need in any way he could, Ted opted instead to take his family away to Cancun. But they didn't just go anywhere, they went to the Ritz-Carlton because, lest you forget, Ted is a man of the people. So long as those people aren't freezing Texans, but rather the elites rubbing elbows at the Ritz. And just in case you forgot the worst part, he blamed the whole thing on his daughters. He released a statement right after this happened saying, quote, "With school canceled for the week, our girls asked to take a trip with friends. Wanting to be a good dad, I flew down with them last night and I'm flying back this afternoon." See, he didn't want to go to the Ritz-Carlton, but he had no choice because his daughters asked him to. And as we all know, when a child asks to go on an international trip to the Ritz-Carlton, what parent could possibly say no? And while it's plenty clear by now that Ted Cruz is a selfish coward and a liar, he's also a threat to democracy. Here's Ari Melbourne reporting on Ted Cruz's secret plans to help Trump in overthrowing the 2020 election.
By January, Mr. Cruz, Senator Cruz, was not only bending to Donald Trump's plan to vote against certifying the Biden win on the 6th. Senator Cruz was actively out plotting and selling a plan in advance, as these secret tapes tonight show. Cruz was talking to one of Trump's greatest backers in overthrowing the election, Fox host Maria Bartiromo. And if you're thinking, oh, does this all relate to everything we've been living through and the recent accountability? It does. We'll get to that. But what I'm going to play you first is how he was effectively privately briefing her on what he called a mechanism to force an overthrow or disruption of Biden's win by denying the certification. So when you listen to this tape right now, remember, at this time, 4 days out from the 6th, few people knew the lengths Donald Trump's allies planned to go on January 6th as Cruz was planning out a key part of the plot.
I think that the country deserves to have a credible assessment of these claims and what the evidence shows. And the mechanism to try to force that is denying certification on the 6th.
forcing this reassessment, as he so dryly put it, of Biden's actual win was for Cruz one step in a larger coup plot. And that's what the next tape I'm going to play for you shows. After the violence on January 6th, there was, of course, the ongoing process of trying to overthrow the election. Cruz, early in that day, technically right before the Capitol was breached, was one of 11 senators voting to deny the certification. I should mention the majority of Republican senators didn't go that far. But that's just one thing. Then there's step two, which you can hear yourself tonight. Again, we have evidence tonight. We're going to play it for you, and you can decide what you think of it. But in this newly exposed tape, Senator Cruz proclaims that the coup plotters would jump from denying the certification, which I showed you they tried to do, to step two, which they didn't reach, but here it is on tape. They would just seize power, he says, and overthrow the whole election. He literally explains it that way. Basically, that they would hijack the certification and then use their own made-up fake commission to declare that the Biden win was fraudulent, and then that would decide who's inaugurated. Quote, who's inaugurated. Now, it is rare to hear the endgame of the January 6 plotters confessed so plainly. Indeed, we heard one Trump official, Peter Navarro, talk about an aspect of this, the congressional sweep part, in public. We heard it on this program. It made news. It was a kind of a partial admission or confession. Now, this tape is Cruz talking in secret. Remember, this is where he doesn't think it's going to get out. He's just talking to someone who he sees as an ally in this cause, Maria Bartiromo, in advance, about overthrowing the race with this fake commission and using the claims of fraud, which, remember, on tape, Ted Cruz said were not standing up in court.
Who's deciding who gets inaugurated?
It would be the results of that commission and what they find. And if they found credible evidence of fraud that undermines confidence in the electoral results in any given state, they would report on that.
He admits it. You heard the question there. So who decides who gets inaugurated? That's what this is all about, because you have a certified winner. You have all of the courts having passed up any potential challenge to that. So at that point, it was President-elect Biden. And Cruz answers that this fake, made-up so-called commission that he and his Trump buddies were planning to try to create to bureaucratize a coup. That's what they were trying to do. That was his answer. That's how they would steal the race.
Oh, nothing. Just a constitutional conservative rewriting the Constitution and deciding that, in fact, it wouldn't be the voters who would decide the 2020 election. Nope. Now it would be a brand new commission. How convenient. How convenient that all Ted and his lackeys had to do was pretend that there was fraud, even despite losing 61 court cases claiming as much, and yet they get to use their own baseless claims of fraud as a predicate to discard the election results. Tell you what, it must be nice to traffic in the alternate reality where Republicans live. Imagine how freeing it must be not to be stifled by the confines of reality. But here's arguably the biggest reason that Ted Cruz is out on Fox News already trying to fleece the network's viewers for money, other than the fact that the grift is why any right-winger appears before Fox's audience, is because he now has an opponent, Democratic Congressman Colin Allred, and Ted knows that it'll be the most difficult race of his career. I interviewed Colin Allred just this past week, and this is what he had to say about Ted Cruz.
Well, it's that we can't afford 6 more years of this, and we don't have to. And one thing that I feel strongly, and that comes up a lot when I talk to folks, is that they're embarrassed by our senator. And as I said in my opening video, we don't have to be embarrassed by our senator. We can get a new one. That's the beauty of our democracy, is that if you prove during the course of your term that you're not fit for the office, then when your next election comes up, you should have a tough race and you should lose. And that's what we're going to do here. The fact that Ted Cruz left our state when Texans were freezing in the dark is funny. And it makes people laugh, but it's also deeply not funny, because there was so much to do during that freeze that a United States senator could have done to try and marshal resources, working with FEMA, working with our state organizations responsible for public safety, to try and help people. There are people in my district who were dying from carbon monoxide poisoning because they were bringing generators indoors to try and keep their power running. And it's indicative of sort of the arrogance and the callousness in which he has served in the Senate. That's also why he's doing 3 podcasts a week, Ryan. He's probably one of your biggest competitors in terms of the amount of content that he's putting out. And he should not. He's got something else to be doing. and he's got a job to be doing, and he's not doing it.
You can watch that full interview on my YouTube channel. But the point is clear. Ted Cruz has spent the last 5 years ignoring his constituents, literally leaving them out in the cold. And now, only when he has an election coming up, only when he needs money, does he suddenly remember that he's supposed to be representing people. I hope Texans can tell what an obvious scheme this is and see Ted Cruz for who he is. Yet another far-right extremist whose sole priority is his own ambition and nothing more. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.